Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to this Naked Mind podcast. Today, I am here with Harvey. Hi, Harvey. Welcome.
Hey, Annie. How's it going?
I'm going really good today. It's a good day. So you wrote in because you do all sorts of really cool stuff, but you also really changed your drinking with this Naked Mind, which is so cool. So I'd love you to just tell us your story, like maybe even, your specifically alcohol story, maybe even just start at the beginning and take me through it.
Great, for sure. So, all right. So I guess we'll just go chronologically. So the interesting thing is that I come from a strict no drinking family. I was raised, well, for a part of my childhood, I was raised in the Mormon religion, which is strictly no drinking. And yet my father's family was sort of split down the middle with drinking. So I was exposed to alcohol in a sort of different way, in that it was this outside thing that I didn't have access to as a child. I only had my one alcoholic uncle from San Antonio, Texas, and his wife. Their names were Roger and Winona, but we called them Aunt Winona and Uncle Rah Rah. And Uncle Rah Rah was super cool. He would drive in from Texas to California in his sports car and show off, and he was always just a super cool guy, and he drank. So I thought, okay, well, that's really rad. And then being pretty close to the Hollywood culture, I always sort of idolized, the fact that they made cocktails in episodes of Bewitched and things like that growing up. So I just thought that alcohol use and all that was just this really neat kind of thing that one day when I became an adult, I would start engaging in. So there is some hereditary, there's some genetic predisposition to alcohol abuse in my family. It's in my genes for sure. And as I got older, my parents died when I was a child. So that's when the real trauma started in my life. When I was a young child, I was abruptly taken from my mountain home, and I thought it was interesting that you grew up in a cabin, because I grew up in the National Forest in California also, and I actually live in a cabin now. Abruptly taken from my childhood home, and really had a pretty rough childhood from there on out, starting about age 7. So when I became old enough to actually have access to alcohol, it was really, for some reason or another, it just became a component of what helped me cope and helped me feel. I just couldn't wait to become an adult. Like, I felt like I had gotten just an unfair shake in life. My siblings, I have 6 siblings. They were all quite a bit older than me. And I was fortunate to be raised by my sister, so I didn't have to go to an orphanage or anything, but it was very difficult because they had young children and they were quite a bit older. So I would look at pictures of all of them as children playing together, and I always felt kind of left out. And I was always sort of the bait and switch youngest child, They would call me into a room, before my parents died, and I would run into the room all excited, like, I finally get to be a part of my siblings, and then they would trip me on the way in and stuff like that. So my entire life story up until now has been a huge bait and switch trick, basically. And I was like the victim, right? So growing up was hard, and I always felt really resentful about all of that. So as soon as I started
How did your parents die?
My mother died of breast cancer when I was 4. And ironically, my father died in a car accident he was a victim of a drunk driver, actually.
So they didn't die together, but they were very close.
Yeah, pretty close together, yeah. Yeah. So my dad died like I was 7.5 or 8, sitting in my living room up in the mountains, and my sister and my oldest sister and brother just walked in the door and said, "Dad's dead and you're coming with us." And that was it. My childhood life as I knew it was over. So, and I didn't really hang on to it much, to be honest with you. I'm really a chin up, don't complain, cope with life kind of guy, kind of a survivor, And so the alcohol just made its way into my life as soon as humanly possible. I started drinking with friends, getting people to buy alcohol for us. And it just became a regular part of my life. And the regular drinking probably started right around, as soon as I got out of high school. I was so ready to get away from my sisters and get on my own. It's like I just wanted to be a grown-up. So this alcohol relation was really a part of my adult identity. And I went out on my own as soon as I was 8. Like the day I turned 18 and I was legal, I packed up my car and I drove out and went out on my own. And pretty much drank every day for my whole life. It was just a part of my social being, and didn't really know anything about nutrition back then. I'm a nutritionist now, but I sort of fell into the restaurant business because I was trying to put myself through college. But at that time, I was supposed to qualify for Social Security payments because I was an orphan if I went to school, but the Reagan administration cut that benefit. So I was pretty much out of luck. I had like pretty much no money. I had some savings. So I ended up in the restaurant business and really liked the social atmosphere, and I was a good waiter. And so I was like, no parental direction. I was like, okay, this works for me. And that became my career. And I worked in restaurants for pretty much the better part of my adult life. And I worked my way up through restaurants. I eventually went to the back of the house, learned how to chef, and then started my own catering business in Los Angeles right around 1996. And the drinking was just always a part of everyday life. It was right there in my career. It was right there in my home. And I reveled my time with my drinking buddies and friends. And the people who didn't drink, I didn't really have a judgment on them, but I felt sort of sorry for them, like they were missing out or something. So fast forward to about 4 or 5 years ago, about 2012, I would say, my career started to become very unsatisfying. And I did well considering that it was a default career for me, I did well in my catering business. I had good clients. I had made a good living, but just started feeling really unsatisfied and also just starting to feel sick. In fact, for fun, I printed a picture of myself before. This was me. Yeah.
Wow.
This was the unhealthy drinking Harvey about 6 or 7 years ago. Crazy transformation, right?
Yeah.
And this is a testament to how different, what a negative impact alcohol has on your body. And I hope we'll have a chance to talk about that from a nutrition standpoint at some point. But yeah, so I was just feeling sick and digestion wasn't working. I was getting bad liver news from my tests, and started just feeling really dissatisfied in general, just from a general spiritual standpoint, and started looking for something different. So I was looking for a new career. I was looking for better health, and I had no idea what any of that looked like. And I was introduced to a network marketing wellness company and thought, the entrepreneur in me was like, okay, I'm curious, so I'm going to check this out. And they had a nutrition component. And what happened was, the way I was able to embrace that was as a chef, I started a Facebook support group, and people who bought my nutrition products then received healthy recipes and support from me. Well, being that I wasn't really a very healthy chef, I had just started my journey of just kind of eating healthier. I really had to start learning a lot. So I just dove into learning about, and I was still drinking pretty much regularly at that point, learning about nutrition, learning about all this stuff. And the group itself went viral. There were 1,500 people on it within the company, and people were starting to call me a health guru. So I started to really evaluate my authenticity in this situation. And I thought, if I'm going to represent a health product, I really need to accelerate this health thing. And I started, consciously drinking less, but not really taking it that seriously. I was improving a lot just from my diet. So, and when you're in the bottom of the pitcher plant, like you point out in your book, you're looking for every reason to just justify that you can keep drinking alcohol or abusing alcohol, right? So something happened where the real landmark kind of thing changed. First of all, in my career, I had this business partnership, and my business partner also drank a lot, and it was just not a great relationship. I mean, we did good work together, and nothing personal against him if he ever watches this, but there was just a lot of feeling stuck, right? Like days where I'd sit at my desk at work, and we ran a catering company together, and staring at my computer, feeling completely brain fogged, just completely powerless, looking over at my partner at his computer. And we both used to play this game to see who would stay the longest, who would stay at work the longest that day. And I always worked harder and longer, so I won. But it was a game that we played, right? As soon as the other guy went home, then the other guy would go home. And it's like, well, I would just say to myself, this is not really exactly why I'm on this planet. I'm not here to outdo someone else in mediocrity, right? So there was just a lot of that kind of soul searching going on. And what really happened that changed things was I had this drinking buddy in my neighborhood in Los Angeles, Highland Park, which is a pretty social party kind of neighborhood, kind of a hipster neighborhood. And he invited me to do this dry January thing that a group of friends do every year. So I was like, okay, I've really never thought of stopping before, you know? I mean, I've evaluated it over the years. I'd ask friends like, do you think I drink too much? And all my friends would always say, oh no, you don't have a problem. You don't have a problem. Because as you know, in society, if you go on the popular belief around alcohol use, which is pretty much the AA mentality of, you know, you're a special person if you have a problem and you don't really have a problem until you hit rock bottom. You know, you cover all that stuff in your book. So since I wasn't like a total loser, you know, living in the streets, my friends thought it was fine. And so everyone reinforced that I was okay. So when my friend invited me to Dry January, I was like, wow, okay, I think I can do this. And it was kind of a scary prospect. I was like, well, this is going to be a challenge. Can I really do this? And naturally, just because of the way I am, you know, I just kind of take things on full on usually. I did really well and I aced it and I outlasted everyone else in the group and I was super proud of myself. And of course that emboldened me to drink more because I was like, well, this is great. I can just stop for a whole month, so I'm fine. So another year goes by and then we tried to do Dry January the next year. And this time I couldn't stop. I had a hard time stopping. And I woke up one Monday, and it was like that typical thing of like, I'll start next weekend. And one Monday morning I woke up and I just tried to start working. I worked at home at that time. And I was just like, this is a serious problem. So I just dragged myself to an AA meeting. And I have to give kudos to AA because I don't know that I would have gotten started on a new journey if I hadn't had that resource. And I have a lot of friends who would be probably dead if they didn't have their daily AA meeting. It didn't work for me ultimately. And that's when I discovered your book. So I trudged through the AA process for a while. And I have a local friend who I was a little overwhelmed and trying to figure out where to find a meeting and stuff. And I'm a really resourceful person. I mean, I have 2 blogs. I make videos of food. I mean, so why could I not find an AA meeting? I have no idea, but I was that overwhelmed, right? And I called my friend who I thought was in AA, but you never know because they never talk about it. And she was awesome. She helped me. She brought me to a meeting. So she was like my AA friend for a while, and she was super helpful. And then I got to a point where I was doing that AA dance of relapsing and feeling all the self-loathing and feeling like counting the hours and the days, and the whole prayer concept was really hard for me. And I have a nutritionist scientific theory about the praying, you know, and how it scientifically what it really is for people and how it actually works.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I was just sitting on my computer one day, and I've hardly used, of all the social media platforms, I think LinkedIn is the one that I use the least. And I happened to be on LinkedIn, and you just popped up out of nowhere, and it was amazing. And you were talking about your book, and I looked at the book, and I was like, this looks really interesting. And there was something inside of me that was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be, and that's also just a question of time efficiency. Like, there's got to be there's got to be a more efficient way to address this, right? And I wasn't trained enough as a nutritionist at the time, so I didn't have enough clinical experience or knowledge to put things together in that way, right? And I thought about getting your book, and then I talked to my sponsor at AA, and then I had that whole AA thought process of, oh no, this is just my alcoholic telling me that I can do it some other way, and I need to just buckle down and go to meetings and pray and do all that. And I asked my sponsor, and of course he gave me that sort of canned answer. And so I put it out of my head, and then a couple weeks later, another relapse. And I said, screw it. And I was like, now damn, who is that person? So I went back and I just spent about 30 minutes trying to find you. And I finally found you on LinkedIn again. But this time you were giving away free downloads of your book.
Yay.
I'm sorry to say I've never invested a penny in your system, but maybe
perfect. I love that.
Your favorite charity or something. Yeah, it wasn't on purpose. So I downloaded your book and I devoured it, I think, in like 2.5 days. And Annie, it completely changed my life. I mean, it's incredible. But what you put together and how you were able to piece together all that stuff, it's just, I was blown away. And the book just spoke to me on so many levels, and it made so much sense. And I have been pretty much definitely healed my relationship with alcohol. That's how I like to say it.
Yes.
And it just and then it just opened up a whole new world. I mean, this inner athlete in me came out, this inner nerd came out. I've been studying, expanding my credentials, expanding my practice, and just a whole different world is out there. And now I use the principles that I learned from you, and I actually use that in my nutrition practice, because the same can apply to food and a lot of other things. We're hardwired to carry out a lot of really unhealthy behaviors, right? From
Totally.
And I think that you talk about the hardwiring or the unconscious wiring around how we're programmed to love alcohol. We also have hardwiring around our own self-sabotaging behaviors from childhood. Mm-hmm. And I was definitely using alcohol to keep myself in desperate, hopeless orphan mode, you know? Yeah, it was just a subconscious behavior. I just beating myself down, sort of like there was nothing in my conscious learning that gave me a window that life could be any better, even though I did great. And I was never like a bad drunk. My friends always loved being around me. Maybe they would say something different now, but now looking back, I was like, holy crap, I was a total asshole sometimes, you know? And so anyway, yeah, so that's what I do now. And because I'm a lot like you in that I don't like to be told what to do. I don't like to be shown, an absolute anecdote. In fact, in my practice, I tell my clients to forget every book they've read about diet, forget everything their friends are doing. And I teach them how to be a meatarian. I'm going to teach you how to just know your food yourself, right? So that really appeals to me. And so when it came to moderation, I pretty much was off alcohol in general, but you make reference in your book somewhere, and forgive me, I don't remember exactly how you put it, but you write something to the extent of either that we're going to return to a state where it's as if we never had exposure to alcohol before. And that's actually what happened to me. In AA, they have the normal people, or they call them normies. Yeah. I'm like a normie again. I can actually drink if I want to, and it doesn't really do anything tragic to me. And I feel like life is a clinical study, and I'm the guinea pig. So if I'm going to really get an answer, I have to try it myself. So I tried the moderation thing. I've tried I'll have a glass of wine with a friend because it's easier than talking about it. It's no big deal. But at the end of the day, with my nutritional training now, and also just looking at what are we here for? Why did we have this experience? And what kind of, how powerful can we be in the world with what we have to offer from experience? And our experience comes at a very, very high price, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't think you should take that for granted or take it lightly. So I just finally got to the point where it's like, yes, I can moderate and yay for me, but what is that really doing? I mean, what's the point? Yeah. Especially knowing how bad it is for you. And I lecture my clients all the time in my office about from a nutrition standpoint, the alcohol is a negative nutrient. It's really working against you and on so many levels. And you have to look at it as your nutrition plan. If you're ingesting it and your body's digesting it, it's part of your nutrition plan. So when you're looking at your goals, how does 2 glasses of Chardonnay a night really play into your goal? Especially, you had a guest, I wrote her name down, Kim, who was talking about menopause. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I see my clients who are entering menopause or they're in the middle of the menopause, I call it the menopause nightmare, where their body's just all out of whack. They can't lose weight. And then they're still drinking wine. I'm just like, it's hard not to reach out and strangle people sometimes, but, people have to, and especially in my practice, it's very client focused. So you listen, you make recommendations. You make recommendations that are evidence-based, and then, the client makes their own choices, right? So I don't think I left anything out. That's pretty much my story now. Yeah.
Well, that's so awesome. Well, I have so many things to say about that. First of all, I just so appreciate you sharing that concept of you've healed your relationship with alcohol. I think that's such a cool way mm-hmm. to say it. And then you're like, I've healed it, but then I've decided that actually, even though it's healed, I don't want it. And I was listening to, I don't remember who it was, but it was someone was talking about, it was a podcast that I was listening to, and somebody was talking about she gets asked, or he gets asked, anyway, what people say, well, should I quit my job, right? And she says something along the lines, I think it was Brooke Castillo, and she says something along the lines of, I want you to heal your thinking so you're really happy in your job.
Right.
and then decide if you should quit. Right? Because actually, if you heal your thinking around it to where your job isn't this external circumstance, that quitting a job and getting a new job and going to that future gate and future pacing is going to be the thing that actually distracts you from healing your thoughts, then you're not going to actually end up, this job, this spouse, that spouse, this state, that state.
I believe that healing, there's a core component that's often missing in the healing process for people. And now we're going to reference it to alcohol, right? So for me, the last day, the end of my AA tenure, there was a cognitive thing that just wasn't working for me. And it's like I'm very pragmatic. So I can be spiritual and I can do that too, but I work well in pragmatic mode. And I needed a better explanation. I needed a scientific method. And I really questioned whether I should trust this book or not to be my answer. And I actually called my older brother, who's one of my mentors. And I asked him, I said, what do you think I should do? And he's like, you know what, if you want to try this and it works for you, then you should do it. And it was the healing. It was the thought connection. It was the making sense. It was the showing me studies, showing me statistics that actually worked for me. And when a client comes in for their diet changes, this is what we do. We say, look, you need to believe and understand on a core level that this is going to work for you. You need to understand what the negative impacts are of your actions. And you need to feel the rewards. When you make a positive change, you need to live and feel those rewards so you can see the difference, because that's what's actually going to create the core change, right?
Yep, for sure. That's so true. And I love that perspective, just again, likening it to that job, okay, if you actually heal that and then you make a decision. Right. So you healed your relationship with alcohol and then you went through, okay, moderation, try that. Okay, this, and then just make actually it doesn't fit my nutrition plan. So that's interesting. And then from that perspective of complete peace about it, you can teach, right? So it's just such a cool thing, because you're not, I love that. That's beautiful. That's such a cool story. So you said something that I really want to pick your brain now on all the nutrition stuff, because it's clear you have lots of expertise, but you said something that just okay, alcohol is a net negative nutrient. You have to explain this to me. Okay.
So negative nutrient is kind of a theory, but it can be backed up, right, by very different, depending on which food you're talking about. So there are foods out there that are considered negative nutrients, meaning food is either life-giving or it's life-taking. That's just the bottom line. So a negative nutrient is something that it's actually depleting your body of nutrients, requiring your body to reprioritize from thriving in order to process, right? So refined sugar would be another one, okay? So what happens with alcohol on so many levels, and I made a list because I wasn't sure if you were going to ask me, but of all the health problems from alcohol. And I actually wrote a blog article about healthy alcohol that you inspired, of course. The healthy alcohol articles that people share on Facebook.
Oh, you're going to have to send that to me. I'll include it in the show notes. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. So just all of the things that alcohol, let's talk about ways that it lives up to its label as a negative nutrient, okay? Breaks down your gastrointestinal integrity, so it can help contribute to leaky gut and poor absorption. Liver disease, in that what happens when your liver receives alcohol, it has to prioritize the alcohol, so it allows fat to build up, and then you get fatty liver. And that can lead to insulin resistance, which is the core cause of type 2 diabetes. Nervous system disorders, screws up your carbohydrate metabolism. It impairs your absorption of vitamins and minerals in general. So if you are having wine with somebody, if you're sitting with someone who's a health freak and they're drinking wine, they're really just making it, they're acting against their actual mission. If their mission is to be healthier, it's like deliberately putting a roadblock up. It's like saying, I want to drive from here to Salt Lake City, and throwing boulders in front of you in the road every time you drink a glass of wine, basically, right?
Wow.
Yeah. What else did I write down? It suppresses your immune system, so you're not able to fight off diseases as easily and stuff like that. Interesting one for men. the existence of more liver enzymes. So your body will make more liver enzymes to break down the alcohol. And when that happens, it has an adverse effect on your testosterone production. So men who want to continue to build lean muscle mass, burn fat, and have an awesome sex drive and be men, they should think about their drinking for sure. And there's a whole hormone thing we could talk about with depression. In my last experiment with moderation, I realized that alcohol was making me depressed. It's because of what it does to your hormones. So there are ways you can reinforce your hormones, but the best thing is just to stop drinking. That would be your first step. Yeah. So
No,
that's
so fascinating.
For nutrition.
I had a follow up to that, like, because you said that all food or all things that you ingest are either giving you life or taking life away. And very clearly, for all of those reasons you just listed, alcohol is very much taking life away. And I think that's such an interesting, I've never heard it said that quite that way before, but is that really, like, you think pretty much universally true? Like pretty much everything you eat is either on one side of that or the other?
No, because alcohol is not really a food, right? Yeah. It's a drug. I mean, like you call it ethanol, which it is really. I mean, I have a hard time saying that because it's so harsh, but it's really the truth.
The chemical compound is exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Thank you. So all foods can be, so when you get into processed foods, then you're moving into that zone where, yes, there are foods that can be pretty much life-taking. Like, refined sugar isn't really doing you any favors. Highly processed foods, processed white flour is going to give you a little bit of protein, a little bit of something. It's going to give you some carbs, some energy, but it's going to also, it also has a lot of negative impacts. And now there's all this emerging information about the glyphosate they use to raise the wheat and how that's in everything and that kind of stuff. So those toxins that come with that food, and then there's toxins, they're finding glyphosate in wine too now. So that's even more of a reason, right, to be really careful with your wine. So anytime you ingest those chemicals and those toxins, your body has to use resources to detoxify and process that. And whenever your body's not using resources to serve your core functionality, then you are moving in a negative direction on the health, what I call the health continuum, basically. So you want to move your body forward on the health continuum at all times, right? And that was my mantra finally, when I finally came to terms with the moderation thing. I said, I only put things in my body that are life-giving. That's it. Doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with whether it's alcohol or not. It could be anything,
And so what are some examples, some non-alcohol examples?
Of life-giving foods or
both? Let's have some on both sides.
Of beverages?
Either food, beverage.
Okay.
Just give us some framework for life-giving or.
Okay. Well, if you're in the stage of your alcohol journey, your sobriety journey, whatever you want to call it, where you are feeling behaviorally attached to that drinking ritual, that adult beverage, kombucha is a really great way to go. Now, some people will say that the alcohol content in kombucha is still dangerous for some people, and it really depends on your genetics and your individuality. It's not everybody. Not everybody is like that. Some people chemically can't drink 5, non-alcoholic beer. It actually affects them in a negative way. Other people can, but I think kombucha is great. The problem with modern kombucha is that now it's very popular and there's a lot of different flavors with sugar. And unfortunately, from a nutrition standpoint, the versions that are legally non-alcoholic are also not as beneficial for you, right? It's that tiny bit of fermentation that's actually gives you the benefits for your digestion. So I think kombucha is really good. On a negative side, I wouldn't replace alcohol with like any soda pop or sugar beverages. In fact, let's talk about that. One of the most graphic picture things that are stuck in my head from AA meetings is the table with all of the junk food on it, in the meeting, the sugar, and being told that eat jelly beans or it's better to eat sugar. Now, I believe for some people, that's probably going to keep them alive, right? If they eat the jelly beans instead of drinking. But eating the sugar and the junk food, first of all, it just keeps you in that unhealthy behavior state longer. So it's like you're hanging on to a knee-jerk reaction. You're hanging on to the weakness and the disempowered feeling for a longer period of time. And my feeling is, and now I'm on the other end, and we're always still learning and growing, but I'm way on the other end of this. So it's easy for me to say this now, but get empowered as soon as possible. You know what I mean? Get yourself as free and empowered as possible. Free yourself from all that stuff if you can, right? So I've had clients who are out in alcohol program or in AA, and they've tried to get off sugar. And I tell them, if you can get off sugar, it is going to change your addiction to alcohol too, because it's alcohol and sugar are not just psychological addictions. There's a whole blood sugar endocrine system thing that's going on that messes with us, your hunger hormones and stuff. So when you're on a sugar yo-yo hunger, I call it counterfeit hunger. When you're on a sugar counterfeit hunger cycle, your alcohol cravings are going to be more prominent, and it's confusing because you don't have the knowledge or training to discern. So you're just sitting there hanging on your seat going, holy crap, I can't get through this. You know what I mean? So I would say all processed foods, try to stay away from those. If you're in the early stages of alcohol recovery or sobriety, think of your food as the alcohol lifestyle was like oxidative stress, accelerating aging. The recovery is slowing down aging, fighting oxidative stress. So you want your meals to be like anti-aging therapy. That's how you want to look at your food. Anti-aging, detoxing therapy. Instead of taking a prescription to recover from alcohol, you're going to look at your food as recovery. So high antioxidant foods, colorful vegetables, fruits, berries, turmeric, ginger, lots of fruits and vegetables, some whole grains, putting nutrition yeast in things, and then really checking in with the food cravings. And when you get to the point where it's like, well, I'm going to eat a donut or I'm going to have a glass of wine, just stop, like drink a glass of water and see if you can stop for 2 minutes and really have a conversation with yourself. Like, are either of these really going to help me? And pull yourself out of that place of like, I have to make this decision. You don't actually have to make that decision, because I have news for you. There are like 20,000 other foods out there that you could be eating. And it's a question of just having yourself supplied with that stuff. And yeah,
it's so true. So things that I'll do is I'll just have like because you like to snack, you like to have something. So I'll have like a bowl of blueberries or something, or, it's cherry season, which is amazing. They're some of my favorites. So have cherries around.
Cherries are so good for you. Yeah.
I love the cherries.
Yeah.
So good. I wish it was always cherry season. You can get always frozen cherries, but it's not quite the same. But anyway, I think that's really true. It's really about access and planning. And something that I've been talking and thinking about a lot lately is just this idea that, and it's interesting because I've been thinking about this in terms of my own calendar. And then now I've started to see how actually this was so true in my drinking journey as well, but I just didn't put the pieces together. I've been really resistant to calendaring my time, aside from obviously meetings and stuff like that, but actually calendaring to-do lists in my day, because I'm like, no, I just want to be able to do what strikes me and what my mood is. And what if I don't feel like sitting down to write? What if I actually really want to, work on something else, or whatever the case is? And so I've been really resistant to it, but people are like, okay, just try it. And what I'm finding is that when I plan with the part of my brain that's like the part of my brain that wants the best for me, instead of the impulse part of my brain, because if I sit down and I have a big block of time and I'm like, I'm going to get something done, the impulse part of my brain is going to not want to go to the most important thing, not going to want to go to anything but the thing that is like the easiest to do, right? Which actually can be like junk food for my time. And so, but when you plan in advance, then I'm actually finding so much freedom on the other side of planning. Because then when I'm done, I can walk away from my desk and be like, wow, I actually got everything done, instead of not getting everything done, having it make noise for me overnight or over the weekend or whenever it's going to make noise for me. And then I started looking at my alcohol journey, and it was the same thing. I bucked against giving up drinking for so long because I just wanted to be the person who could be whimsical and have a drink and all this stuff. Like, it was just kind of like part of my identity. It's who I wanted to be. I wanted to have that like free-loving, fun-loving side, right? But actually, through the self-discipline to only put things in my body that are really healthy for me, with few exceptions, I am so much more fun-loving because I feel so much better. So actually, freedom does come on the other side of self-discipline, which is not something I think that you can learn with your mind cognitively until you experience. At least that's been my journey.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's really what it came to for me with the moderation thing was, I am going to help a lot more people in a more powerful way if I just don't drink at all, right? I'm going to be representing a different version of a different person that is inspiring. And that's more inspiring. People don't need another person to conform with something that's destroying our society, right? They need people to take a stand. So I just finally decided, you know what? I should take a stand. This is really irresponsible for me not to. And from the planning perspective, it's interesting because people say, oh, can I get a meal plan, right? I'm like, well, I don't give meal plans. I teach you how to meal plan. And the beginning of the meal planning process is learning how to schedule block the time to plan your nutrition, to prioritize your nutrition, and also learning how to anticipate obstacles, that the excuses that always come up that keep you from eating that healthy meal, right? So if you plan ahead for the obstacles and you put the schedule block in, and then start with your priorities. So which parts in your week do you need the most help getting the healthy meal? And you can even call it, let's apply this to sobriety. Which parts of the week does the urge come up or the trigger come up to drink alcohol, and make a plan for it ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
And then you put that plan in place, and then you've got it prepared. So you keep the foods that support you within arm's reach at all times, right?
Absolutely.
And it's funny, the urge to just go with the flow and all that, I could totally relate to that because I'm exactly the same way. But that's funny because our unconscious urges, I believe, just from my studies and experience, that's really just our fight or flight nervous system response that's really only designed to keep us alive when we need to. So if we're running on that all the time, we're just like, you know what I mean? It's just sort of.
I mean, I really like how it's, again, I think I've been listening to a lot of Brooke Castillo's podcasts lately because this is again from her, but she says, what does she call it? The Triad. And she's like, your brain does three things: conserve energy, avoid pain, and find pleasure. And so if you allow your life to be run on those three things, which are important for survival, but now we are out of survival mode. We are on the higher, on the Maslow's hierarchy of need, we're on the self-actualization. All the needs have been met for most people in our culture. And so we are actually at this place of, and if we're running on the primitive brain, which wants to do those three things, like, we're in trouble from the beginning. So we have to actually, and she argues, and I think this is a really interesting thing to think about. She argues, like, instead of conserving energy, you want to do things to generate energy. Instead of avoiding pain, you want to do things to lean into discomfort because therein lies the growth. You want to do things to get out of your comfort zone, right? And instead of seeking pleasure, you actually want to hone your skill to delay gratification because, again, the freedom comes on the other side of that type of self-discipline, which I think is really cool.
Right. Well, one of the most powerful things you wrote in your book that I just absolutely loved and ate up was the realization that I didn't know when I was at the height of abusing alcohol, I didn't know how to feel like a normal person anymore. I didn't know how to feel childhood joy anymore. Yeah. And when I stopped drinking and that joy, that feeling started coming back, it was the best thing ever. And then, like, let's not even talk about how much better sex is. Okay.
Yeah.
That's like the secret, right? Not anymore.
Now it's out.
Yeah, it's out. Unfortunately, that still won't be motivation enough for a lot of people, but maybe.
No, but it's so true. It's so true.
Yeah. Yeah. And just and that's the whole thing about just, I believe the true pleasure comes from the, pushing sort of those healthy limits of your physiology and your biochemistry. And then you get to that point where it's sort of like, you're getting the same kind of high. You're getting the same chemical release in your brain that you're getting from the drugs, except you're getting it through natural process.
Right. And that's how our brains were designed, right? Because all the drugs do, any drugs do, whether it's high fructose corn syrup to, processed flour to alcohol to cocaine, all they do is numb our bodies and brain's ability to feel pleasure. I mean, that really is the end result. That's neurologically it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's right. And if you're a caveman running from a dinosaur and you win the race, then that's a super awesome feeling afterwards. That's basically,
Absolutely. We
how it
do.
works.
My husband and I do Taekwondo, and I just tested for my purple belt, and you had to do a combo break. So I had to break 2 boards in different, I did a spinning back kick and then a front kick. And like breaking those boards, like, yes, that is such a high. So much more fun than you would think. I mean, you'd think, yeah, that would be pretty fun. No. That's really, really fun. And I don't think probably if I was drinking, I would have that same level of, oh my gosh, this is so much fun, about that or so many things in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. So interesting.
Great.
That's so cool. Well, Harvey, 2 questions for you to wrap us up. But first of all, it sounds like you just have so much knowledge and such a passion for people. So where can people find your blogs? Where can people get to know more about you?
Great. So my main website is harveyslater.com, and that tells you about my practice. And there are links to my nutrition blog and my recipe blog. Because I'm a chef, I have an extensive library of healthy recipes. So that's a good place to start. And anyone who's a fellow Annie Grace fan, please feel free to reach out to me and say, hey, it's awesome. I have to admit, I haven't been a big follower of yours, but that is actually testament to the efficacy of your book. I mean, I just didn't.
It's one and done.
You know? Yeah. But I know, I mean, I've been amazed over the last couple of years of watching your project grow and watching your following grow, and it's just I'm in awe of you. I'm blown away.
Oh,
I mean, if I can impact that many people with my work, I will be one happy guy.
That's so awesome. It's so cool. So I always end with this question, but if you were going to go back, especially you have the before picture. Let's see the before picture again, if you have it handy.
Uh-huh.
You're going to tell this guy, you're going to go back and you're going to put your arm around him and you're going to tell him, what is life like now? What do you not have to worry about? What should you be thinking about? What would you say to him?
Oh, well, I would say just if something doesn't seem quite right to you, you're right. Trust your own instincts and know that there are alternatives out there. There are other answers for you, and don't ever feel like you have to accept something that doesn't feel right in your gut. And that goes for the alcohol relationship itself. And that also goes for treatment programs. If something doesn't feel right to you, it's okay to question everything, and do what's right and be honest with yourself. And if you're honest with yourself and you question everything, give yourself permission, to be entitled to the right pathway for yourself.
So good. I have such a big fundamental foundational belief in the power of questions. You just said something that really speaks to kind of the core of who I believe myself to be. And I think for myself, if anything, whether it's from religion to treatment to, your friends are telling you, oh, just don't question it. Or questions are unwelcome in terms of questions bring fear. Mm-hmm. I remember meeting people who would be really caught up in different religions or something, and questions would bring fear. And questions should never bring fear. Like, in my world, God is going to be big enough for all the questions, right? Like, of course, he's not going to be afraid of the questions. So I think that that's such true and good advice, not just for this, but just for everything at all. If you are following your inner compass, we were created curious. It is we would not be sitting here talking virtually from, I think, California to Colorado, and then broadcasting it to literally millions of people who have downloaded, like the podcast just crossed 2.5 million downloads. So we wouldn't be doing that if human beings weren't curious. Okay. Right. So that is so foundational and important to our ability to question everything. And I think one of the things that society has really gotten wrong, not any individual, but just as a whole, especially just with the whole term alcoholic, is that we've made it wrong to question our alcohol intake, and we made it wrong to question our drinking, and we made it something that's bad. And it isn't just like questioning food or sugar. It is something that's, oh no, wait, do you have a problem? Are you an alcoholic? What's happening? What's wrong? And it's a
very, very compelling situation out there. It's very strange. And congratulations for calling it out, And this is my first time actually speaking really publicly about this. So thank you for the opportunity.
No, it's been awesome. It's been awesome. I'm fascinated with your story. You might know that I'm working on a book of naked life stories where I'm just compiling people who give permission to use their stories into just a book of readers' stories. So I'd love to use yours.
Sure, that'd be great. Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Whatever can help move the purpose further, right? Move us along.
So good. But there's so many elements of just really finding true healing and peace in yourself and allowing all the questions. Freedom is on the other side of all the questions, not doing what you think you're supposed to do just for the sake of doing it, but allowing yourself to be your guinea pig in your own life and like taking back your own power to that degree. It's really beautiful. So yay. Well, thank you so much, Harvey.
Thank you so much. This has been really an honor and a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you too. See you later.
Bye. Have you tried the alcohol experiment? Okay, if not, drop everything and go to thisnakedmind.com/experiment. This free 30-day challenge is designed to interrupt your patterns and put you back in touch with the best version of you. You remember it was that version of you that's living your most joyful life, the version that doesn't need alcohol to relax or to have a good time and is having more fun than ever. And again, this is a totally free challenge that will change everything for you. So learn more and join me 100% free at thisnakedmind.com/experiment. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.